Hi, everyone. Welcome to a very special fireside chat. You're watching part of our alumni series, Where Are They Now?, where we're talking to some of our all-star alumni to see what they've been up to since they got certified as product managers with Product School. Today, I'm talking to Dramil Parikh, who is a senior product manager at Oracle. Dramil, thank you so much for catching up with us.
Thanks a lot for having me, Alan.
So let's get started. What have you been up to since you got certified with Product School?
So I joined product school last year during March, just before the pandemic started. And I was then a senior developer at Oracle. And so my certification kind of made me confident enough to go and ask my management that I want to do some product management stuff. So let me try out some things. And luckily, they had a spot and they let me audition for the role. And I worked as a PM for a release, basically a quarter, an entire quarter. And then I was luckily able to transition into the role formally too. So I've been working as a senior product manager at Oracle for the last 15 months now.
Well, congratulations on your new role. I'm so glad it all worked out for you. What's a typical day to day like for you now as a senior product manager?
Yeah, sure. So I work as a product manager for a subscription billing platform for enterprise companies that enables them to use subscription business models and also manage warranty subscriptions, things like your extended warranty for an office printer, for example. So a regular day for me involves meeting with customers to discuss their requirements. Sometimes I have meetings with sales to go over demo strategies for important prospects because it's still a younger product. So PMs are still involved in that process too right now. Then beyond this, I spend most of my time defining the problems customers are trying to solve and then working with my various engineering leads to decide the possible solution approaches for me to evaluate. And then I finally come up with the user story. And then you have your usual Scrum meetings in order to ensure that things are getting built. And I also have to handle some project management parts of it to ensure that things are getting docked correctly and the customer's getting the right product. And I also have days in where I need to do a lot of competitive research, which is pretty important for an enterprise SaaS products, because especially when your competitions have started before you, they probably have some more data than you. So to see what they are doing is kind of like a good metric to see, okay, this is it, it makes sense. It's a validation kind of a thing. Or it's a stumbling block that I want to avoid. And then I also help my management do deal win-loss analysis. When we lose a prospect or we win a prospect, we want to understand why did we lose it or win it, and what's our strength and weakness compared to our competitors. And then I also help them with prioritizing for the roadmap planning. So it's like juggling several things at once. It's like, yeah, you basically have a lot to do every day.
I was going to say that sounds like you're juggling a lot of different things at once, but at least you're never bored.
You never bored. That is true.
So, casting your mind back to when you were a student with Product School, what was your experience like with your cohort and with your instructor?
So my cohort instructor was Debankar Naskar. He was a senior PM at Apple, and he was really, really good in this field. And so it was pretty insightful for me to learn from him. And so when in product school, you have a lot of hands-on exercises that you do during the cohort classes. And so Debankar would really help us learn what it means to frame a problem so that anyone understands it. And you need to learn how to communicate in a proper way, because these might seem like trivial things from the outside, but once you step into PM role, your performance will really depend on these things. So he actually gave a lot of practical advice to me on how a new PM should manage expectations and how a new PM should build credibility with his management, engineering, and customers. So that was something that's been pretty helpful to me as I went forward in my career. And adding to that, my cohort also had a very senior PM who just joined in for the experience of a classroom learning experience kind of a thing. And he also added a lot of insights to the entire class. And he was really good at presenting his ideas and things like that. So it was a really fun, not just fun, but a really immersive learning experience for me. So I was pretty glad that I did it.
Well, I guess you just answered this question, but what was your favorite part about the process of getting certified? I'm guessing it was the interaction you had with your instructor, or was there
That
was
was
there
one,
something else?
and I definitely enjoyed all the simulated hands-on exercises that we did. So before joining product school, I had already read the product book, so I was pretty happy with it because it's a pretty good book. I would say suggest anyone that asks me about product management, it'll them go and read this book. It'll give you a very good introductory idea. So we do a lot of hands-on exercises, and that really helps clarifies ideas because it's like a proper simulated learning that you can't really replace just by reading something. So that was something that was really important to me there.
Mhm. And how does working in product management now compare to what you thought working in product management would be like? Did you have a pretty clear idea, or when you actually landed that product management job, were you like, oh, this isn't what I thought it would be?
So there is definitely a lot of overlap between what I learned in the course and the actual job itself. But now, obviously, there are differences too, because the PM role is still very broadly defined, and every company defines it in a different way, and every role will have a different set of responsibilities. And every product is different. A B2C product will be very different from a B2B product. A B2B product like Slack will be very different from a B2B product like financial software that's released every quarter, kind of a thing. But there is one thing, the core principles will still stand. The PM's job is to be the voice of the customer while ensuring that we are building the right things in the right priority. So you have to ensure that everyone's on the same page. And ultimately, while the credit belongs to everyone, the blame for dropping the ball will lie with the PM. That's just how it goes usually. So we're expected to get things right and get it past the finish line. So those things, the bunker in his class made it very clear. He said that you have to give the credit away, but you have to take the blame. And so a lot of the generalized things were pretty accurate. The differences only come from which role you're going to step into, basically, in which company and which team, actually.
Mhm. But so in general, even though obviously, as you said, there are a lot of differences between all the different PM jobs, there's no way that one source can tell 100 different product managers exactly what it's going to be like. In general, did you feel like getting certified as a product manager prepared you for working as a product manager? Did it sort of help at least a little bit?
Yes, I definitely think it was pretty important for me because it gave me a very solid foundation on the general skills you need and to do my job well. And then my engineering background helped me too. But I think people sometimes trivialize the soft skills and focus more on problem solving in this role. They think that it's a design, it's me coming up with impactful ideas, it's going to help. But things like communication are really, really important over here because it won't matter if you come up with the most brilliant solution if your engineering is not convinced about that. If you can't put your point across to your management and explain why it's important, they won't never like chip in and say, okay, you can do this kind of a thing. So these soft skills will really help you make an impact. And without them, no matter which design you come up with, the most brilliant ideas will all fall through. So this was pretty important for me in product school, at the hands-on exercises, the interaction with the instructor who's already been in the field for a long time and would give actual practical advice in real situations that I would deal with. And that was pretty important to me. So that really helped me a lot. So, and that really prepared me. At the same time, the only thing I think the product school should probably do more is that they can discuss the breadth of PM work more a bit because you guys yourself have to deal with the B2C and a B2B flow too. So product management can really differ when you are in a B2B thing, like I had to go into, wherein sometimes qualitative metrics become much more important, that you really need to go through the qualitative process of product management rather than the quantitative. Because if you're an initial product in a B2B thing, you don't have data to play with. And sometimes data is a luxury that you don't have. So qualitative metrics become really important. And at least that was one more thing that product school really helped me prepare because the course prepares you on how to do user interviews, how to keep track of these things. So overall, it really helped me in doing my job.
Mhm. And what advice would you have for people who are maybe thinking about getting certified, but they're not too sure how they're going to balance doing the classes, doing the hands-on activities, whilst also having a full-time job and friends, children, rent to pay? Like how were you able to balance your studies with everything else?
I think the entire course, I did the weekend cohort wherein we had a 6 hour lecture on every weekend on Saturdays. So, and with the hands on exercises, another probably 1 to 3 hours of work every week. And it's definitely pretty manageable with your, and because I had a full time job too, and while doing this, so it's pretty manageable to do it. You just need to plan, and the course structure is pretty well done so that you don't feel overwhelmed at any point of time. It's a very easygoing, proper learning course that you can go with actually.
Mhm. And what do you see as being the future of product management?
So I think the core principles will always stand true, ensuring that the best value is being created for the customer and the business. But beyond that, at least in the B2B space, I think with the kind of technological innovations we are seeing, PMs are building and will continue to build really impactful stuff like simplifying complex supply chain problems, improving efficiencies using IoT, and blockchains will help ensure contract compliance in a much better way because cryptocurrencies is just one aspect of blockchains. But when blockchains will be really implemented to solve like the contract negotiations, the contract disputes, and things like that, it'll probably have a much bigger impact, not just in a B2B space, probably even in the legal space too, to make things much more simplified. So, and obviously, an ML will help sales team become much more efficient, sell better, have much better insights, and really improve your customer relationship experience at the end of the day. So, I think it will be possible to solve much more problems, many more complex problems with these technologies. And I think really good PMs and engineering teams will make some really exciting products in the next few years in this space itself.
We touched a little bit earlier on the skills that people think they need to be product managers. What would you say are the most important skills that all product managers need to be developing in order to sort of move with the times? Because things are changing so rapidly, not just in products but in tech, just the whole world. How can product managers stay agile and roll with the times?
So I think there are two aspects of it. One is I think product managers need to be learning continuously, and you have two areas in which you probably want to learn. One is basically your general product management skills, because there are newer frameworks, newer ideas coming up in our field all the time. A lot of product managers experimenting in their teams, and they put out tweets about it, a Twitter thread, a Medium article, and things like that. And those are pretty insightful to learn. It's like it gives you a lot of good ideas that you can try in your own job too. So that one aspect of the job, I think it's very important to follow some really good Twitter handles, some really good Medium articles and things like that, including Product School and a lot of other PMs who are there on Twitter. Actually, these are the people that you need to follow. And that really helps you. The second part of it, technological innovation, I think PMs generally need to read more and be aware basically of how business is changing and how tech is changing itself. And to kind of understand what are the underlying technologies and basically things like that. So like, for example, machine learning is used as a catch-all in B2B space, but machine learning is incredibly hard to do because without data, you won't be able to get the results you want. So PMs need to be aware of these constraints and things like that. So I think reading as much as you can on tech and business, that will really help you get a more rounded idea of what you want to do going ahead kind of thing, and what are the different ideas that you can probably prototype or work with, or what might make sense for your own work kind of a thing.
So you mentioned continuously learning as being a really key factor to being a great product manager. What sort of things are you learning at the moment?
So I mainly read. There are two things that I do a lot. That one is like I follow some really great Twitter handles would put out like a 10-thread Twitter tweet that then linking to numbers of the articles about product frameworks, about how they deal with user metrics, about how they deal with situations where you don't have data and things like that. So a junior PM, I think what's really important is that to build a credibility, you need to get things done basically. And a lot of these things involve you convincing your management, convincing your engineering. So sometimes it's really important to get advice on how really good product managers do these things so that you can mimic them and you can make them your own ideas and things like that. Apart from that, I try to continuously read a lot about, I read a lot of Wall Street Journal. I read a lot of tech articles and business articles mainly. And I'm like, I read a lot of PM articles on Medium too, and all the blogs by Product School and things like that. And in the evenings when I walk, I listen to a lot of the Product School podcast because that's a really good way. Because sometimes you have like really good people on the podcast. I think like Neer Isle and people like that were like really cool product leaders. And I definitely like Masters of Scale on LinkedIn. Oh, sorry, by LinkedIn founder Reid Hoffman. It's a really good podcast on learning how startups have to deal with a number of issues, not just related to product management, different aspects of the company too. Because sometimes the best ideas you get in product management might be by what is this problem over here and how can I solve it kind of a thing. So hearing someone describe their experience of solving a problem might, you might start thinking, how would I have done it kind of a thing. And that's where you get a much better grip on the process exactly then.
Great sources there. And what advice do you have for people who are trying to who are trying to make time for their continuous learning when they're trying to like carve out the space in their day, because it's so easy. Well, one of the things we're talking about in the community at the moment is how many meetings product managers have, and like where do you find the time for your individual work and your individual learning when you have so many meetings? How do you make that balance?
So I think the one big difference I think every engineer when they move to product management sees is that your time is much more constrained going forward. As an engineer, you work pretty much like sometimes like a lone wolf. Especially as an individual contributor, you get your things done, you're done kind of a thing. In product management, it does not work like that. So one of the first things when I changed into the job that I really, really needed to learn is that I need to be a lot more organized. So I started using better productivity tools to manage my time, manage my calendars and things like that. And especially when you work in a big company, when you have teams in Europe, you have teams in India and things like that, you might be required at different times of the day too. So you also need to get a grip on your schedule and figure out this is one time during the day when I'm gonna just read or I'm just gonna hear a podcast or something like that, and you just have to make in time accordingly. So it's like you need to be cognizant of the idea that you have to make time, but you also need to ensure that you have flexibility to do the things you need to do too. And that's mainly how I make my time. So example, because I'll hear my podcast when I'm going for an evening walk. Basically, I hear it for the first 20, 30 minutes, and then switch to music. So that's how I have to make in time in my busy day, basically. And it's just something that as you get more organized, you will get better at keeping track of your task accordingly. And then you'll be able to figure out, okay, I have time to do this basically. It's just something that once you step into the role, you have to figure out. Otherwise, you're going to drown.
Yeah, that's definitely a common theme with product managers, is that because there's no one size fits all solution to everything, you just have to figure it out for yourself. I think that's one of the more exciting things about the role, is how much it can shift. So speaking of that, that actually brings me to my very last question. But before I ask, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. I think everyone who's listening will have learned a lot from your experience. My final question is, what's your favorite bit about being a product manager?
I think there are two parts of it. One is mainly the interaction you have with the end user and the customer when they are so passionate about their problem and they want you to solve it. And it's like, okay, see, someone actually has a pain point over here, kind of a thing. It's really impacting his or her day. And what do I do about that mainly? Kind of a thing. It's a valid thing. So being the voice of that customer in your internal meetings and explaining that why is it a problem to them, it's a big thing, kind of a thing. And that's a really fun thing. The other really good aspect is, especially when you're working on a product with a longer release, you're going to see the end result much later. You might have worked on a very cool project for almost a year, and that's when it's going to get shipped to the customer actually. So seeing that being shipped to the customer, getting the recognition that, okay, your team has done a very good job over here. I think that's one of the best things that you get in the field, basically. The longer you wait, and if it's a good result, you're all the more happier you will be, kind of a thing.
Perfect. Well, that brings us to the end of our catch up. But again, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you everyone for watching. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye.